It all started one humid afternoon in late June when my husband's half-brother, Daniel, arrived unexpectedly at our summer house in Vermont. I'd only met him twice before, briefly, at awkward family gatherings where everyone tried a little too hard to pretend our messy blended. Family was something out of a holiday movie. He was younger than my husband by about 7 years. Tall, lean in that effortless way some men are, with a half smile that felt like it had secrets stitched into it. He'd been traveling through the Northeast on some vague road trip after quitting his job in finance in San Francisco, or so he said, and decided last minute to drop by for a night or two. I remember opening the door and freezing, just a second too long when I saw him. Those gray-green eyes, the scruff on his jaw, that lazy way he leaned in the doorway like he belonged. There, I told myself it was just the surprise, just the heat, just the way his shirt clung to his chest in the damp air. Nothing more. My husband, Mark, was thrilled to see him. They stayed up late on the porch that night, drinking bourbon and trading childhood stories. And I sat with them pretending not to notice how often Daniel looked at me when Mark wasn't watching. Or maybe he wasn't pretending not to watch. Maybe he wanted me to. OT Ice Dot, and maybe I wanted to be noticed. I'd been married 9 years, and while I loved Mark, the kind of love you build when you shared mortgages and funerals and family holidays, something in me had been restless lately. I'd stopped checking my reflection before bed. I couldn't remember the last time someone touched me like they needed to. I wasn't unhappy, but I wasn't awake either. The first real moment between us happened on the second morning. He was in the kitchen in nothing but low-slung joggers, pouring coffee, his abs catching the soft morning light, like something from a movie. I came in wearing a thin white tee that barely covered the lacy black underwear I slept in. I hadn't planned it. I hadn't not planned it either. His eyes dropped for just a second, then lifted to meet mine with a flicker of something hot and dangerous. I poured myself coffee and stood beside him at the counter. Our arms brushed. I didn't move. He didn't either. "You always this quiet in the mornings?" he asked, voice still thick with sleep. I shrugged. "Depends who I'm waking up with." He smiled, slow and crooked, and something inside me clenched. We danced around each other for the next 2 days casual. Touches that lingered, stolen glances, late night, talks that dipped into too deep waters. Mark went back to the city for work on Sunday evening, leaving Daniel and me alone for 2 nights before he'd return. I told myself nothing would happen. I even believed it for an hour. That first night alone, Daniel and I sat out back, a bottle of wine between us, the air thick with crickets and tension. He told me about a woman he used to love, the way she made him feel like time bent around her. He said my laugh reminded him of hers. I don't know who kissed who first, but suddenly my lips were on his, and he tasted like summer and want and everything I'd forgotten I craved. He didn't ask if it was okay. He knew, and I wanted him to know. I wanted him to ruin me. We didn't make it to the bedroom. He lifted me onto the kitchen counter, my legs wrapped around him, his hands under my shirt, his mouth everywhere at once. I was trembling, breathless, desperate in a way that felt like freedom. I remember the sound of the drawer opening behind me as he fumbled blindly for a condom. The way he swore under his breath when he couldn't find one. The way I whispered, "I'm on the pill," like it was a prayer. It wasn't gentle. It wasn't romantic. It was raw and messy and completely, devastatingly real. I came twice before he finished, gripping the back of his neck, my forehead pressed against his as he gasped my name. It felt like stepping off a cliff and finally understanding why birds don't fear the fall. Afterwards, I sat on the floor, legs still shaking, my heart a drum in my chest. He knelt in front of me, brushing hair from my face. "I'm not sorry," he said quietly. I wasn't either. We didn't talk about it the next morning, but everything between us had changed. He made us breakfast like nothing had happened. Scrambled eggs, toast. Black coffee, but his fingers brushed mine a little too long when he handed me my plate. And when I caught his eye, there was heat behind it again, restrained but smoldering. I walked around the house in a loose tank top and nothing underneath, pretending not to notice. His gaze following me like a shadow dot. It was a game, and we both knew the rules even if we didn't say them out loud. That afternoon it rained, the kind of heavy, wild summer rain that makes everything feel electric. We were stuck inside, and the air between us was thick with unsaid things. He was reading on the couch, shirtless again, stretched out like a man completely, at ease with his body, and I sat across from him pretending to scroll through my phone. I must have looked at him every minute, maybe less. He didn't say anything, just slowly set the book down and looked at me the way a predator looks when it's tired of waiting. "I think we should stop pretending," he said. I didn't answer. I didn't have to. I stood up, walked over, and straddled him right there on the couch. His hands went to my hips, under my shirt, over my bare skin, and I moaned into his mouth as I kissed him. He carried me upstairs this time, kissed every inch of me like he wanted to memorize it, like he already knew he'd never get enough of me. I never felt so wanted, so completely devoured. We spent most of that rainy day in bed. He made me come over and over again, slower this time, teasing, holding eye contact well. His fingers worked their magic, whispering things in my ear that made my whole body arch up to meet him. I did things I hadn't done in years, not because Mark wouldn't, but because I hadn't wanted to. I let Daniel see all of me, every dark, hungry part. He didn't flinch. He fed it. That night, we lay tangled in sheets that smelled like sweat and sex and heat lightning. And he asked me what I was going to do when Mark came back. I said I didn't know, but we both knew I was lying. There was no going back. Not really. Not when I tasted something so wildly alive. I thought I could compartmentalize it, tuck it away like a summer fling. But I was already aching at the thought of him leaving. Mark came back late Monday night, tired and sunburned, kissed my cheek like nothing had changed. And in some ways, nothing had. We had dinner, watched a movie, went to bed like any married couple might. But when he touched me under the covers, I didn't close my eyes. I didn't need to. I could still feel Daniel's hands on me, still hear the way he said my name when I came, soft and urgent like it meant something. The next morning, Daniel was gone. No note. No goodbye. Just his empty coffee mug in the sink and the faintest trace of his cologne on the guest pillow. I told Mark he had to leave early for something back west, some job offer or friend emergency. I don't even remember the excuse I made up. He bought it, but I didn't forget. I couldn't. I found myself checking my phone constantly, hoping for a message, a sign, something to say I hadn't imagined at all. I even messaged him once, just a hey, and deleted it before I hit send. I felt hollow and full at the same time, my skin still buzzing, with memories that wouldn't fade. 3 days passed without a word from him, and I tried to settle back into my normal life, pretending to care about groceries and weekend plans, nodding through Mark's stories from work, laughing in all the right places like I hadn't been utterly undone by his brother on every surface of our house. My body still reacted when I remembered the way Daniel had looked at me, the way he had taken his time like he wanted to ruin every man who ever touched me after him. I started waking up at night, skin flushed, sheets damp, hand between my thighs before I even realized I was chasing the ghost of him in the dark. On the 4th night, when Mark was asleep next to me, I heard the buzz of my phone and my heart jumped before I even saw the screen. It was a message from Daniel. Just one line. "I can't stop thinking about you." I stared at it for 10 minutes, heart pounding, mouth dry. I should have ignored it. I should have deleted it, blocked him, buried this whole thing like it never happened. But I didn't. I wrote back. Then do something about it. He came back 2 nights later. He didn't say he was coming. I just heard the knock on the door after Mark had gone to sleep, and when I opened it, he was standing there in the same gray hoodie he wore the night we first kissed, eyes stormy, jaw tight like he'd been wrestling with the decision the whole drive. I didn't say a word. I just stepped aside and let him in. We didn't even make it upstairs this time. He pushed me against the wall, his mouth crashing into mine like it had been starving, like he had. I wrapped my legs around him, and he carried me to the couch, pulling my panties down with one hand, growling low in his throat when he found how wet I already was. I bit his shoulder to muffle my cries, knowing my husband was upstairs, knowing I should have cared and didn't. He bent me over the armrest and took me from behind, one hand in my hair, the other between my legs, and I came so hard I almost screamed. When it was over, we just lay there, panting, our bodies still trembling from it. I knew then it wasn't just sex. Not anymore. He wasn't a mistake or a fantasy. He was something deeper, something dangerous. I felt more like myself in those stolen moments with him than I had in the entire last year of my marriage. The affair didn't stop after that. It became routine. Daniel would text me when he was nearby or driving through town, and I'd make excuses: grocery runs, yoga class, errands that didn't exist. I started wearing nicer lingerie under my clothes again. I wore perfume, just for him. I shaved my legs even on rainy days. We met in hotel rooms, in the backseat of his car on deserted trails. Once even in the basement laundry room while Mark was upstairs watching the game. He'd press me against the washing machine, hand over my mouth. Both of us half laughing at how reckless we were. It was insane. It was intoxicating. It was everything I hadn't realized I needed until I had it. Sometimes we wouldn't even have sex. Sometimes he'd just hold me, brush his lips over my collarbone, tell me how fucking crazy it made him to think of me going home to another man. He doesn't see you, Daniel would whisper. Not like I do. And God help me. I believed him. Because with Daniel, I was seen. Not as a wife, not as a homemaker or a quiet shadow in someone else's life. I was fire. I was temptation. I was a goddamn woman. And yet, the more we stole time, the more I began to unravel. The lies, the guilt, not guilt for what I was doing, but for how easy it had become to lie to Mark, for how little effort it took to keep 2 lives running side by side. I started to wonder how long we could keep this going before something cracked. One weekend, Daniel asked me to come away with him. Just 2 days, just us, somewhere up north where no one knew us. I said no at first, told him it was too risky, but the look on his face shattered me. He needed more. I did too. So I lied. I told Mark one was going to a women's wellness retreat with friends, packed a small bag, kissed him goodbye, and drove 3 hours to a lakeside cabin Daniel had rented. It was pure, uninterrupted bliss. No pretending. No sneaking around. Just us, naked, in the water under the stars, wrapped in blankets by the fire, taking each other over and over until we were too exhausted to move. That night, as I lay on his chest, my fingers tracing circles over his skin, he said it. Leave him. I froze. He didn't repeat it. He didn't need to. I didn't answer him right away. My fingers paused on his chest. My breath caught somewhere between fear and thrill. The room felt too quiet all of a sudden, like even the crackling fire was waiting to hear what I'd say. I looked at him, really looked at him, his messy hair, his tired eyes, the way his hand kept brushing slow, lazy lines up and down my thigh like he didn't want to rush me, didn't want to scare me off even though he had just laid something massive between us. I kissed him instead of speaking, slow and deep, as if that would delay the decision, hiding in the corner of the room like a shadow. The truth was, I had thought about leaving Mark more than once. Late at night, while I was curled up beside him. While I was texting Daniel under the covers. While I was pretending orgasms, smiling. Through dinners, laughing at jokes that no longer touched me. I'd imagined a life with Daniel messy, complicated, passionate as hell, but it was a fantasy, wasn't it? Real life wasn't hotel rooms and lake houses and bodies tangled in secret. Real life was taxes, and in-laws and empty dishwashers. Still, I didn't stop seeing him. I couldn't. I told him I needed time, and he didn't push, but I saw it the disappointment. The hope clinging to the edge of his smile. Every time I came to him after that, I could feel the question in his hands, in his kisses. Like he was asking me silently if this time I'd stay. And every time, I didn't. Mark started noticing I was different. Though not in the ways I expected, he said I seemed lighter, happier, even more alive. I almost laughed at the irony. I was glowing from another man's touch, and my husband thought it was self-care or a new diet or maybe the yoga classes I wasn't actually going to. I'd started dressing better, feeling better, smiling more, and he took it as a compliment to his marriage. It made me sick sometimes, how easy it was to lie with a straight face. But then something shifted. It was a Wednesday afternoon. I had just gotten out of Daniel's car, my lips swollen, thighs sore, underwear still stuffed in my purse. And as I walked into the kitchen, Mark looked up from his laptop with that casual warmth he always wore when he was relaxed at home, and he said, "You're the best thing that's ever happened to me." Just like that, no warning, no reason. Just that, sweet, simple, true, . And I froze. Because in that moment, I felt the sharp stab of guilt in a way I hadn't before. It wasn't about what I was doing anymore. It was about what I was taking from him. From both of them. Mark didn't know he was sharing me. Daniel didn't want to share me anymore. And I was caught in the center of this wild, burning thing I had started and didn't know how to end. That night, I didn't sleep. I lay awake between the two versions of my life, one warm and familiar, the other wild and electric, and I realized neither could exist for much longer without destroying the other. But even as I stared at the ceiling in the dark, my phone buzzed on the nightstand. A message from Daniel. "I miss the taste of you." And without thinking, I wrote back, "Tomorrow. Same place." We met the next day in a small cabin outside of town. One we'd used before when we needed to disappear from the world for a few hours. The sky was low and gray, the kind of overcast that made everything feel suspended in time, like we were outside the reach of reality. When I stepped inside, he was already there, sitting on the edge of the bed, eyes dark, jaw tight, the air between us humming with everything we hadn't said. I didn't speak. I just walked to him, climbed into his lap, and kissed him slowly, like I was memorizing the shape of his mouth, the way he tasted when he hadn't seen me in days. It wasn't the hungry, frantic kiss of our early days. It was something deeper, heavier. His hands moved over me with a kind of reverence, like he knew this moment mattered, like maybe he suspected what I still hadn't said out loud. When he pulled my shirt over my head and laid me back on the bed, he didn't rush. He undressed me like he was unwrapping something sacred. And when he slid inside me, I felt every inch of him with a clarity that made my eyes sting. It was slow, intimate, our foreheads pressed together, bodies moving like we were saying goodbye with every breath. And maybe, were. Afterwards, we lay in silence, my head on his chest, his fingers tracing soft circles on my back. "I can't keep doing this," he said quietly, not looking at me. "I love you, but I'm not built for being someone's secret. I want more. I need more." My throat tightened. I had imagined this moment 100 different ways, but none of them prepared me for how it would actually feel. "I know," I whispered. He looked at me then, eyes searching mine. Do you love him? I didn't answer right away. Not because I didn't know, but because the truth was too complicated for yes or no. I love what we used to be, I said finally. I love the version of myself I was with him when we first met, young, hopeful, untouched by time. But I'm not that woman anymore. And with me, Daniel asked, his voice low. With you, I feel awake. I feel like I can breathe again. Like I'm not invisible. He closed his eyes for a long moment, then opened them slowly. Then come with me, leave him. Come be with me. I sat up, pulling the sheet around me, suddenly cold despite the warm room. You say that like it's easy. It is, he said, sitting up too. It's a choice, it's hard. Yeah, but it's not impossible, it's just fear stopping you. And maybe he was right. But fear was a powerful thing. Fear of breaking someone who didn't deserve it. Fear of being wrong. Fear of losing both of them in the end. That night, I didn't go home. I drove aimlessly for hours, tears streaking down my face, thinking about all the lives I touched with my choice as the husband who still kissed my forehead every morning. The man who saw through me like glass. The woman I used to be. The woman I was becoming. I thought about love, not the fairy tale kind, but the messy, tangled, soul-hungry kind that hurts as much as it heals. And I realized something. Love isn't always enough. Not when it lives in the shadows. Not when it demands you live two separate truths at the same time. When I finally walked into the house, Mark was on the couch, half asleep, the TV casting soft light across his face. He looked up, smiled like he always did, and said, "You okay?" And in that moment, I broke, because now I wasn't. I sat down beside him and said the words I never thought I'd say. I told him everything, not all the details, not the raw, animalistic moments. Not the way Daniel made me come undone just by looking at me, but the truth. I told him about the loneliness, the ache, the accident of desire that became something bigger than me. I told him about Daniel, and I watched his face fall in slow motion like a tower collapsing in silence. He didn't shout. He didn't cry. He just sat there, stunned, his world rearranging itself in real time. "I don't hate you," he said after a long, agonizing pause. I don't know who you are anymore." And that was the worst part, because I didn't either. The next few weeks were a blur of quiet conversations, separate bedrooms, therapy appointments, lawyers, and the slow, painful disassembly of a life we'd built over almost a decade. There was no screaming, no slammed doors, just two people trying to untangle themselves from something that had once felt unbreakable. I didn't go to Daniel right away. I needed space to be alone, to sit in the wreckage and ask myself if I really loved him or if I just loved what he awakened in me, And after a month, when the dust had settled just enough, I met him at a coffee shop downtown, He stood when he saw me, that same crooked smile tugging at the corner of his mouth. And for the first time, I let myself feel it, not the heat, not the thrill, but the peace of knowing I had chosen, not out of fear, not out of guilt, but because I was ready to stop living half a life. "Hi," I said, and he said, "You're here." And I was finally here.